So now on the show, I want to take a look at a film that has been out in cinemas, but is also coming to Netflix this week, and that is Del Toro's Pinocchio. Of course, Guillermo del Toro has, for a long time, wanted to make a Pinocchio film, and I think a lot of people have been kind of nervous because there was a Pinocchio film that came out earlier this year that wasn't that great, but this is Del Toro's version of Pinocchio, and I was kind of excited about this film, but also a little bit worried because I'm not the biggest fan of stop animation films. But I went into this film with a very, very open mind. I kind of liked what Del Toro does with a lot of his films and how he thinks outside the box, and that is certainly the case of what happens here with Pinocchio, because in this version of Pinocchio, it is set during the events of World War II. Very early on, we meet Geppetto, voiced by David Bradley, and he loses his son, and in grief, he decides to make a little wooden boy called Pinocchio, played by Gregory Mann, voiced by Gregory Mann, I should say, and he is brought to life by a wood sprite voiced by Tilda Swinton, who wants to try and bring happiness back into Geppetto's world. At the same time, the story is being narrated by the character that we normally know as Jiminy the Cricket, but in this adaptation is just known as the Cricket, played by Ewan McGregor, who inadvertently becomes part of Pinocchio because Geppetto chops down the tree that he calls home to make Pinocchio. Now, this is a very different version to Pinocchio than what we normally expect. The Pinocchio that we see here, very early on, it almost feels like he doesn't want to be alive. He blames Geppetto for bringing him to life, and then he doesn't want to obey by the rules, of course, because he's never been brought up in that kind of situation where he's been chastised or anything for anything he's done wrong, so he kind of runs a little bit wild. Now, at the same time, Geppetto is feeling a lot of pressure from the priest, played by Bern Gorman, to do some work for him at the actual chapel, which is where Geppetto's son passed away. Now, the priest doesn't like Pinocchio from the first moment that he meets him. At the same time, we also have another character called Dotaire played by John Turturro, who wants to sign everybody up to the Nazi party. He's putting a lot of pressure on his son, Candlewick, voiced by Finn Wolfhard, to do so. It's a very full-on storyline that we see here. We also, of course, have Podesta, played by Ron Perlman, come in, who ends up taking Pinocchio away, and he's very much an exploiter, which we see with his baboon, Spazzatura, voiced by Cate Blanchett. There's a lot going on in this film. You probably think that I'm talking a lot about the plot here, and that's because so much goes on in this film. There's a lot of emotion in this film. Really well done with the way that the emotion comes through with these stop animation puppets, especially with Geppetto and the loss of his son. That really comes through. But just the situations that these characters find themselves in, it's different to what we have come to know from the Pinocchio story, and for that it works. The introduction of World War II in there plays a very, very important part. We see the difference in the relationship between Geppetto and Pinocchio and Candlewick and his father. But wrapping all of that up into the politics and everything, it works really well. It brings this dark, grim world which really comes to life with this Pinocchio story. And Del Toro does an amazing job here. I thought I was going to go into this film kind of thinking it was average because of the whole stop animation, but also because it's a story I've seen done a lot of times before. But I genuinely loved this film. I thought Del Toro did such an amazing job to bring a darkness to this film that worked so well throughout. You almost want to cry at times during this film, which is weird because you know that these aren't real characters, but there's just this amazing world that Del Toro has managed to create with these characters. And look, I just loved this film. I can't wait to be able to sit down and watch it again at home now it's coming out on Netflix. It is a masterpiece of animation. If it doesn't win the Oscar for Best Animated Film this year, then there's something seriously wrong going on, because this is an absolutely amazing film, and I am giving it 5 out of 5. I just absolutely adore this film, and I can't wait to watch it again.